Peace, blessings, and elevations, family. Tonight, we are very honored and humbled to have the elder, master educator, community activist, and scholar, Dr. Kaba Hiawatha Kamene, in the building on the freeway to elevation to elevate your mind. Welcome, brother.
Hotep and peace to my brother Kelly. Thank you for the invitation. I've been looking forward to this.
Likewise, likewise. Brother, please grace the audience with who you are and the many, many, many things that you've given to our community and to our people over the last 45 years.
Okay, brother. My name is I consider myself Brother Kaba, and I've been an educator in South Central Bronx. I first started teaching in Gary, Indiana, left New York, went out to Gary, taught high school, and I really went out for another job, but they offered me this job, so I did both at the same time. And then I lost a teaching job, but I was so impacted by education, I decided that I would be an educator. That was in 1977. And I returned back to New York via Washington, D.C. I started teaching in the New York City Board of Education, October of 1979, and I retired July of 2009. I've taught every grade, I've taught every subject. I taught college for 14 years. I fundamentally am a curriculum writer and a staff developer, which means that I write out methods and content of what to teach. It's not just what you teach that's important to me, it's how you teach it. And I noticed that being in South Central, and I remained in the same community. We had 35 schools. I remained in South Central Bronx, District 9, all of my career, because I realized that if I hopped around and started to ascend, because I've been an assistant principal before. The one thing I found out about being an assistant principal, I did not want to be an assistant principal. Teaching is my thing. I'm just enthralled with teaching, making that connection with our community. And I've been director of programs, and all of it helped me, Brother Kelly, in its own way, because it showed me how to do this on larger levels. And my basic understanding is that culture is a cornerstone to the development of a human being. Dr. Wade Noble says, culture is to a human as water is to a fish. And when a fish is out of water, many times it acts like a fish out of water. And so culture becomes extremely important. Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop teaches us that when someone wishes to oppress you, this has nothing to do with culture right now. This is just, if somebody wants to dominate you, contain you, and control you, there's three things they'll take from you. They'll take your history, your language, and your psychological factor. Your psychological factor are what Dr. Leonard Jeffries calls your VIPs, your values, your interests, and your principles. When they have taken your history, your language, your values, interests, and principles, then they superimpose their history, their language, their values, interests, and principles on you, so that no matter what decision you come to, it'll never be in your favor because you're not looking at the world through your eyes. So when we wonder why we're still in this position, it's because we don't know our history. We are not speaking a common language. And we now live in George Washington projects or Thomas Jefferson houses. Okay, or Andrew Jackson Community Center. How could you ever view the world in your interest when you're still on a plantation? So that what I've tried to do in my work, in my webinars, in the books that I've written, is to take our history, our language, our values, interests, and principles, and lay it out in a systematic way that our community, particularly our children, and I'll tell you something else. The children that I've been with were my greatest teachers. Because it was, and I'll even take a step further. the more knuckle the head, the better teacher I became. Because I never just dismissed those knuckleheads because they were knuckleheads. And when I say knucklehead, I say it with love. I'm talking about the brother or the sister that's just giving me a warm time in that classroom and won't let me get to them. But in doing that to me, they fine-tuned my skills because I was always trying to find a way to get to them. So they actually made me a better teacher because I didn't dismiss them. See, to me, that's a teacher that doesn't know how to teach when you dismiss a child. Because that means, oh, ain't nothing I do is going to help you. No, that's not what you're really saying. What you're saying is I am not equipped to deal with a human being like that. I don't roll like that, brother. I'll find a way to get to you. And that's how I dedicated my life. And that's what has me here doing what I'm doing. My experience. I do not come before the community with theoretical understandings. I was on the front line for over 40 years, teaching on the front line.
See, Brother Kaba, you really kind of walked down the path that I wanted to go already. And so what I would ask you, because to your point, you took many subjects. And one thing that I've always heard you talk about is the greatness of our ancestors, and you being a man of science, and I speak in science from the specific space of knowledge, we know that from that place, because our ancestors were able to accomplish the phenomenal things that they were able to accomplish, their DNA resides in us. And so what I would ask you is, you talked about VIP. Can you go a little deeper in why our culture is critical when we're building a relationship, establishing trust? If I can orient a young person or young people to the culture that they come from, how does that influence how well they're able to receive information?
You know, what's interesting, Brother Kelly, is I am from what we consider today to be the hip hop nation.
Mm-hmm.
That was my generation. Okay, 1965. When you're dealing with Gil Scott-Heron, Nikki Giovanni, Sonia Sanchez, the Last Poets. Okay, I'm from the Bronx. I remember Kool Herc. Okay, a Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, Melly Mel. Okay, I used to go to dances where he'd be the DJ. And this was before he was who he became. So that we have to start with where we are. In 1979, when I started teaching in New York City, there was a song that was played on the radio for the first time. It was called Rapper's Delight.
Yes.
Okay. What is said to be the first rap song on the radio. That was my first year teaching. So from actually being part of the Black Panther Party growing up, and blending the concepts of the Black Panther Party and all of the other, and then taking the street organizations that some people call gangs, taking that philosophy with the information, blending it all together, came a culture. Rap is only the evocation of hip hop. Hip hop is a culture. Hip hop has a way you dress. Graffiti, if you want to call it graffiti. I call it street art.
Mm-hmm.
It's an aspect of hip hop. The way you speak, your posture, your gait, the way you do what you do, all of that is part of the culture of hip hop. And rap is the speaking of it. We have to approach our young people in this generation from where they're coming from. Imagine this. I'm someplace where I think most of us should be. I'm thinking now. This is just an idea I'm saying. I'm somewhere where I believe we all should be. But there's a big chasm. There's a big gulf between where I am and where the other people are on the other side. And I'm beckoning them to come over. That's not how I do it. I build a bridge, cross over, take their hand and walk them across. With our young people, in my experiences, and I learned this when I was teaching college, we have got to understand what it is that we have to do from a methodology perspective, not just what it is, but method. And what I attempted to do with our young people is to go where they were and then bring them over to where I thought they should be. If there's something I think you should know, if there's something that I think that you should not, or that if you know how to know it, I'm just not going to yell across this big gulf opening. I want to go across to you, to work with you, and then bring you across. I'll give you an example. I visited a church, a Baptist church, a Black Baptist church. And the purpose was I wanted to Africanize Christianity. And the way I did it was I had the choir, and this was fun. We had a concert where the choir would come up and sing a gospel song. Wade in the water, be with me, Jesus. You know, and what I would do is that in that song, like there's another song titled Gospel, is called Touch the Hem of His Garment. Mm-hmm. Okay. And what I would do is I'd have the choir sing it, and then I would Africanize it. When you say, be with me, Jesus, if you're singing songs like Wade in the Water or Touch the Hem of His Garment, the hem of his garment, which is what you turn up. Here you had this lady that had gone over to all the doctors. She was sick. She had gone over to all the doctors. She spent all her money on all the doctors, and nobody could heal. But then she heard about this Jesus, and she just wanted to touch him because she believed she'd be healed. And when she touched him, Jesus said, "Who touched me?" And that's when she began to explain the story. That's us searching for our spirituality. When we touch the hem of his garment, what we're actually talking about is we are looking at knowledge and wisdom. So when you touch something, you make contact with it. When you study something, you make contact with it. So in this deeply religious Christian church that had a little bit of consciousness, because I wouldn't have gotten in there without a little bit of consciousness on their part, I was able to Africanize their Christianity because, brother, I don't have a religion for our people. Mm-hmm. All I have, Bob Marley say his last song, last album, all I've ever had is a redemption song. That's me. All I have is this story about how great you are. Mm-hmm. Won't you help to sing these songs of freedom? Because all I ever had was this redemption song. So this is what I'm asking us to do. And this is why I'm on this program. Because really, Brother Kelly, what we've been working on getting to this point, what I've been saying, as Bob Marley says, is emancipate yourselves from mental slavery because none but ourselves can free our minds.
That's right.
You know, all I have is this redemption song. That's all we have. And don't believe me. Research this for yourself. And come to that. So to answer your question, brother, I believe that we sincerely must, without a shadow of a doubt, go to our people where they are and bring them across. You know, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad once said, yeah, it's all right, but in order to clean a fish, you first have to catch it.
You know, that's deep. It also made me think of the great ancestor, Maya Angelou said, people will forget what you say, they'll forget what you do, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. Yeah. And so teachers that actually show and connect with their students on that type of level, you don't have to work as hard anymore because they'll meet you there and they will always be there ready to learn because you've touched their heart. So I love how you just weave that into the conversation.
That is it. And brother, you know, to continue that thought, I often ask people, I say, think about your favorite teacher. And almost immediately there's a name that comes up. Could be kindergarten teacher, could be third grade teacher. Oh, Miss Williams. Oh, Mr. Johnson, the coach, Henry, you know. And I always say, I bet you that the reason why you remember them is because they taught to your hippocampus in your brain, which is where your long-term memory resides. And the fact that you could go back that far and remember them, when they taught you, they did not teach you, they taught to your hippocampus. And I say, I'd be willing to bet you, like for instance, I tell people, if Professor John Henry Clark, who I consider to be my teacher, if Professor John Henry Clark had been a basket weaver, I'd probably be on your program, Brother Kelly, teaching people how to weave baskets. That person that brought that to you, there's one thing that they made you feel, which is very important as a teacher, even as a human being in your interpersonal relationships. Make people feel safe in your presence. Make them feel safe. And if they can make you feel safe, they can teach you anything.
Wow.
Because a lot of times the person that may be your favorite teacher might not be nowhere near doing or what they taught you, what you may be doing now. You could be a mathematician, but the person that impacted you could have been your gym teacher. If they made you feel safe in their presence. We have to make our people, and particularly our children, we need to make our children feel safe in our presence. That whatever I come to, whatever I may say to you, you have to feel that I'm coming to you with your best interest at heart. I ain't trying to get over. I ain't trying to get you to do something that you're not supposed to do. I'm not trying to make myself look good so you do good on the test. I really care about you. And I'm here to make sure that you become the very best person that you can become.
Brother Kaba, so you just went back to something that I've always remembered. When you talk about Kemet, it says, you just mentioned interpersonal. Mm-hmm. And immediately in my mind, I went to interpersonal because every religious text always talks about knowing thyself, or everything you need is inside of you. And when I listen to you talk about interpersonal and just thinking to your webinars and how we speak to leadership, and leadership first has to come after I learn myself and learn self-regulation, so that interpersonal relationship and perspective then bleeds into that social emotional component, and then the social regulation, so that now that I know myself and understand myself, I then can better be able to assess and connect from an emotional intelligence standpoint, so that I can shape and mold and lead and help people navigate their own regulation so that they can be effective. And so from a teaching standpoint, which this ties into another question I had around traditional approaches, that's really strictly tied to theory. And I guess many times I would think of that when a teacher first becomes, I just graduated an Ivy League school and I'm teaching in a very challenged area, yet I don't understand the people and the culture, but I know this methodology says I should do this. But your experience in your 44 years really that's what has shaped you to be able to have the greatest impact an effect on these students. And
Brother, please finish your sentence, brother.
oh, no. I was just gonna say, I just want you to share with the audience, because you talked about it earlier, how for just as much as you taught, you also yourself was a student in that process.
Oh, there's no, brother, I consider my teaching career my advanced studies. That's my PhD. Brother, when my undergraduate work was in international politics. And my minor was Caribbean studies with a focus on revolution. That was my minor. Because back then in the 70s, there was a lot of things going on in Central and South America and in the Caribbean. A lot of stuff. And like I say, I went away, I got into communications. That's what I taught in high school, radio and television, because I was into radio.
Okay.
And I was working in an all-black radio station in Gary, Indiana. And the teacher that taught radio and television went on sabbatical, went on leave. So they didn't have somebody to teach radio and television. So they asked me, would I be willing or interested in teaching? And so I was a production manager and I was the weekend disc jockey. So going to teaching in school from 9 to 3 did not impact my schedule, because my production manager was like from about 5 in the evening until about 10. So I had a lot of time. I was free during the day, so I took the job. And when I look at the development of where I was going with my work, I began realizing that, wow, we're not teaching properly. We don't understand when we're talking to children or even to people. Like, for instance, let me give you 2 examples. If you were in a dark room, no lights, couldn't see anything, and then all of a sudden you found a light switch and you turned the light switch on, and then you saw the chairs, the tables, the lights, the televisions, the computers, the art on the wall. My question to you is, did all those things appear in the room when you turned the light on? No, they were always there. Your light just wasn't on. So when you talk about that collective knowledge and understanding, all you have to do as an educator or as a parent or even as a friend, and this is all you can do, is to guide them to turn the light switch on. Because everything you need to know, you were already born with. Nobody gonna put anything in you. So when I would go into my classrooms and teach, I went in knowing that I could learn something. I didn't go in thinking that this was just a A-B relationship. This was a relationship that was circuitous. It was circular. Because like I say, my children, my students taught me so much about teaching. And I believe that if the student hasn't learned, the teacher hasn't taught. And so as we move through this process, it becomes very clear scientifically what we're actually experiencing as a people. And that aspect of understanding that everybody comes to the table with everything they need to know, and all we have to do is guide them to turn on the light switch of their mind to see that they already know it. How could I put something in your head that wasn't already there, first of all? Somehow or other, you would have to have connected what you know with what I know. So I am your experience, but your consciousness is your insperience. When you walk into a classroom understanding that, and when you deliver information with that type of information in mind, my job is not to teach you something you didn't know, but to tell you something you already knew. And then you take it to the next level. And these are the realities that we face as a people. And Western education is in trouble. It's not even good for their children. Because I've had children in my college classes, students of European descent, who have told me they've learned more in my class than they have learned their entire time in college.
Wow.
And, you know, my ego says it's me, but my science says it's the information and the way it was imparted to them.
Brother Kaba, so since you said that, I can reflect back to, I'm 50, so I grew up in the 70s. When I look at sitting at a desk and my chair was straight up, and particularly Black kids learn very differently. And so we don't sit still in a seat and focus. And so, you know, this whole thing about and we were talking about this before we even started tonight, the central nervous system and it moving, and how that movement is really what allows our kids to get relaxed, but it's also harmonizing and energizing, because when the central nervous system is moving, I'm more able to grasp information, as opposed to sitting in this rigid position trying to digest the information you're sharing me, because that's not how we learn. We might be able to digest and regurgitate, but to your point around really making sure we know who we are teaching. Let me back up a second. Oftentimes, people will use one method to teach 15 kids in a classroom. And there are different forms of learning. So I may be a visual learner when John may be a learner who needs to be more hands-on. How has like our current Western methodologies impacted or really created a problem for people of color, really all people, but I'm specifically talking about our people, because we look at the school to prison pipeline, and it's really difficult for me to really think that if our kids excel all the way up to third grade and then all of a sudden their scores drop, is that a failure of the child, or is that a failure of the system and the teachers?
It's the failure of the system. And you are right, brother. It just hasn't failed melanated children. It fails all children. Like I say, when I have taught students of European descent, even children, I've come to realize how, see, the way the system is set up, it's set up edu-business. It's about money. When you talk about multiple intelligences and you talk about the intrapersonal and the interpersonal educational system, I learned in the 6th grade that, because basically, let's go back to Howard Gardner.
Okay.
Howard Gardner, Dr. Howard Gardner is a psychologist, and he began to realize that Western psychology, and you know, psychology doesn't mean the study of the mind. Saku, where the word psychology came from, saku means soul. Psychology is the study of the soul, not the study of the mind. And so when we're looking at each other, we have to deal with each other under those conditions. Howard Gardner came, you know, the way in which the Indo-European dealt with it is like all things, like the pipeline, you know, from school to prison. Don't forget the triangle, though.
Mm-hmm.
Because the triangle is the music industry.
Right.
Because you see, the same people that own entertainment business own the schools charter, and they also own the incarceration centers.
That's right.
It's a perfect trilogy. Control what they hear, control what they learn, and then put them in jail for what we gave them.
And the jails aren't state institutions like they tell people.
Yes.
They are private industries.
Yes.
Where people making a lot of money off of.
That's it's an edu business. It's an edu business. That's what I used to always tell my children. I say, listen, understand how the system works. Because I used to teach at Rikers Island.
Okay.
So they had a high school there. And I used to also visit the adult population, male and female, the Rose Single Wing, Rikers Island. And I used to tell the brothers what Malcolm used to say. Malcolm said, I did not serve time, time served me. And to understand what that system is about. And to understand the 13th Amendment. So you got to understand the 13th Amendment, and you have to have some knowledge in terms of language arts. And you have to understand the role of a contrasting conjunction. So that when the 13th Amendment says that slavery has been abolished, except, you have to understand what that word except means. That word except means, yes, slavery is abolished. However, it still exists because of the word except when you're in prison. So prisons are plantations. And we as a people, in talking to our young people and talking to our people, I never said, yo, if you don't get an education, you're going to go to prison, because that's the last thing young people want to hear. Well, plus, it's not the right thing to say. But what I want to do is I want to show you options. I want to show you what happens when you can play the system for what it is and be able to achieve what you want, but never get caught. It's just like that. What's the difference between a stupid criminal and a smart criminal? Stupid criminals go to jail. So when young people say, yo, did you hear what Brother Kaba said? But I got their ear. And like when I tell you about those brothers and sisters that used to give me a hard time, particularly the brothers, when I start talking about Rikers and talk about what I used to go through, man, they used to always say, yo, tell me that story. Because I got a lot of stories, Brother Kelly. I can just tell the story. And I used to tell them stories about my experiences when I would go there. They said, well, what happens when you go there? And I would tell them about how you have to cross over onto an island. And then you'd have to go and give up your identification. And then they would give you something, and then you go to the next stop, and then you'd give that up, and then they would give you something else. So to get in took a lot of work, and to get out took as much work. And to just understand what they're doing and understand what it is. I was at the cusp of when they started the legal aspect of special ed, 1979, the Lauer Decree and the Consent Decree. I was there. I was in special ed before they started drugging the children.
Wow.
And I remember who they chose to go into special ed, because they didn't have no children for special ed. What they did is they took all the brothers that had so much to say, and they put them in special ed. And when I used to roll with those brothers and I used to talk to them in special ed, I've had so many experiences, man, in special ed, talking to our children to help them understand. You have to understand the game. You don't play baseball using basketball rules. And you don't play soccer according to tennis rules. You play the game according to the rules of the game. And you got to understand, when you're in school, there are rules. Play them. And play them well. Have a game when you come into a classroom. Play the game. Students in the 8th grade, when I was teaching social studies, they said, Brother Kaba, this is boring. And I say, yeah, this is boring. They say, yeah, Brother Kaba, this is boring. I said, how boring? They said, Brother Kaba, this is just really boring. What you're saying is boring. And I say, well, you multiply that by 10. That's how I feel teaching you this boring stuff. I'm bored teaching. They say, oh, you know what Brother Kaba said? He bored teaching this. So why are you teaching this? I say, because I'm playing the game. And I promise you this, if you give me 20 minutes to teach you what's going to be on the test, I'll spend the other 20 minutes teaching you what I think you need to know as a Black or Hispanic child. and we made a deal. So I spent 20 minutes talking about George Washington and all this other stuff. And then the next 20 minutes I spent talking about how he had enslaved against their will 300 people that looked like them.
Mm-hmm.
Play the game. Get out of here. When I say get out of here, I mean graduate, move on. Because what I'm doing with you now, Brother Kelly, this is what I was born to do. But all of my experiences up until this point is what had you call me to say, brother, can we do something together? All that I went through before, no matter how much it was boring, no matter how much I didn't like it, I played the game. And I was able to retire after 31 years, 3 months, and 15 days. And yeah, I count the days, bruh, because 15 days is 3/4 of a month. 5 days a week. And 3 months is 1/4 of a year. And when they pay you your retirement money, they pay you by the day. So those 15 days and 3 months brought some extra cash in my retirement fund.
Look.
And this is what allows me the freedom that they're not going to strangle me. I call it econicide, where they make you be a good boy or you'll lose your job. I played the game. I'm the spook who sat by the classroom door. Because now I'm out here telling you what I saw happen in the big house. I helped build 5 charter schools. And the moment they got the charter school in place, they fired me.
Wow.
People say, well, after the second charter school, why did you keep doing it for another 3? I say, because they paid me. And I also learned how to build a school. So when I came out, I know how to build a school. I played the game. I got a little bit of money that I was able to take care of my family, pay the rent, put food on the table. And I was able to learn how to build a school so that if ever and whenever I'm in contact with people who want to do it, I know how to tell you how to do it. I know how to set up your budget. You know, in a school budget, 85% of the budget goes into personnel. Mm-hmm. 15% goes into supplies, 15% of a budget. If you, let's just take $100. For every $100 in a school budget, $85 goes to paying the teachers and the office workers of the school. 15% is what gets the books in the classroom, the computers, the trips that you're going to go on. 15%. 85% goes into hiring teachers. When I tell this to people, they say, you know, they never really thought of it that way. I said, but you're not the spook who sat by the classroom door. That's why I'm here to tell you what's going on. It's an edu business. Charter schools, oh man. When charter schools first started, they didn't start as charter schools. They started as what's called New Vision schools. And they started in New York. And they contacted me because I had developed a resource center in social studies. And the idea of the New Vision schools was to go into communities and to get church groups and community centers and organizations and community-based organizations in league with the school, bring them together and to create a resource hub for the school. That's what New Vision schools were meant to be. But nobody saw the beast that lurked in the back of the room. Mm-hmm. Which was corporations. Because after New Vision schools lasted maybe 3, 4, 5 years, I built 2 New Vision schools, or helped to build. I was the staff developer and curriculum developer. Everybody had their role. My role was curriculum developer and staff developer, how to put the school in place, what to teach the children. And what happened was, see, charter, this is why you see what's happening and you see what they're fighting for. And I know what they're doing, but it failed and it's going to continue to fail. And blessings on the children were the ones that made them fail. Because what happened was businesses and businesses got in where they called it adopting a district, where, for instance, a corporation a big corporation would adopt our district. And what they would do is that they would go into league with another corporation, a book company, that they would then order all the books from that particular company. So all the social studies books came from this particular company. But they was making money. Okay, corporations watch this. And so what they did is they went into the government, because you see, a public school cannot sell to a private institution, but a state can. Do we all remember what they used to give to the pirates during the enslavement period? Do you remember what the kings and queens of Europe would give to the pirates in order to authorize them to do what they were doing in terms of the colonization of the world? What were they called? They were called charters. So while public cannot sell to private, the government can. So what the government did was took over the public institutions and then sold them to private organizations. But there's a problem. And I'll give you another example. And, this is just part of how the system has fallen apart. When I was first teaching and I was in charge of budget, there were things that schools were responsible for in terms of the budget. And they would what's called encumber the funds, which means that you would project for next year what you needed. And the district office would give you whatever you needed. However, the district office also had a budget where they took care of any trips that the school might have gone on. When the yellow bus comes to pick up the children to go to the park. Well, there was a special budget in the district that did not touch the school's budget. Also, the budget was in place for according to how many children you had, how many assistant principals you could get, how many teachers you could have, how many office aides you could have. Much of what you did, your budget by how many children you had determined what went to the school. Here's what the charter schools did. With the budget of the district office and the district of the school, they rolled it all up into one and threw it at the school. So, if a school was having problems, they would cut down on how many trips the children made in order to hire another reading teacher. Some schools who had a budget for an assistant principal did not hire an assistant principal, hired a teacher, made them the administrative assistant, paid them less, and then they would hire another teacher to teach tutorial mathematics, which meant that school wasn't functioning properly because the role of the administrative assistant was not legally what the role of the assistant principal was. So there was an opening in the school that created leadership gaps. And whatever happened in that school, the principal was responsible for it, about how she or he put the money. So phys ed programs were canceled in order to have a reading program. Art teachers were not hired in order to hire another reading teacher because the school was responsible for the outcome in the charter school system. And that destroyed the fabric. If we had held on to our educational system and took it over like we were doing, we could have fixed the problem. And in the mid-'80s, we did. We had a black school, a brother come from Minneapolis named Dr. Richard R. Green. And he became the chancellor of the New York City school system. This brother implemented plans that had never been implemented before. And the first thing that happened after that brother had a severe asthma attack and transitioned is they brought this know-nothing person to become chancellor who undid everything that Chancellor Green had done. Next came Michael Bloomberg as mayor. We had a decentralized system here where we had people on different levels, like a community school board that ran the system. Bloomberg understood the power of money, the billionaire.
Mhm.
So there were three things he wanted to do. Number one, he wanted to get rid of the citywide Board of Education. He then wanted to take the power of running the schools away from the community and put it in the hands of a superintendent that he chose. Because in New York, the superintendent and the chancellor of schools was chosen by the community. But when the mayor took over, he chose who the chancellor would be. And the chancellor was the person that would do his bidding, or else they wouldn't get the job. So three things he did to destroy the New York City system and then bring and support the charter school system because of the business. And it failed. It failed. And that's where you see the people talking about the school to prison pipeline. Because the charter school is the school that pipelines the children into prison. And the people that run charter run the prison industrial complex and the entertainment field. And if nothing shows you, you should know by Betsy DeVos, who became the Secretary of Education in the last president's administration. Charter school, multi-billions of dollars. But it failed. And it's failing worse now than ever before. So
I was just going to ask you, but what's crazy is it's failing more than it has before, but it seems like every public school that was once a public school, like in my hometown, the way I grew up at in Philadelphia, all the schools that were regular schools are now charter schools.
Oh, yes. And some of them have space in public school buildings.
Yes, yes.
Okay, like I remember, you could have in one building what used to be one building. Now, here's the deal. Here's another example. I can give you live examples of this. The school that I ended up retiring from was one school. It was called Charles R. Drew, CIS, Community Intermediate School, 148. It was one school. It had cafeteria, auditorium, gym, phenomenal looking building. But when the charter schools took over, there was one school that had the first two floors. There was another school, another charter school had the third floor, and I was up on the fourth floor. And even when I first started teaching there, that had two different schools in it. It had Kappa and it had Frederick Douglass Academy. Okay? But here's the problem. When the charter schools first came, people say, well, who's the most important school? I said, here's how you know who the most important person in the building is as it relates to being administrator. Whoever has the bathroom in their office is in charge. Whoever has the emergency bell is in charge. And normally it's on the first floor. Because the principals on the other floors had to take a classroom and make it their office. Because there really were no offices there. Maybe an assistant principal's office, but not an office. They were all classrooms because all the offices were on the first floor. And so what we're dealing with here is the fact that what happens when we're scheduling lunch? There's only one cafeteria. What happens when we're thinking about developing the gym class? And what about the science laboratories? Because a lot of times science laboratories were only in one section of the building. So there were some students that could get science lab, the other schools couldn't. And what happens when they do their plays and they need the auditorium? But most importantly, what happens at dismissal? When you have, in my case, 4 different schools, everybody had to exit out of different parts of the building. Because, children are going to compete. And when I belong to this school and you belong, like you have like educational street organizations. And so what they actually did is that they put the children against each other. And they also made it so that the teacher on the school on the first floor had the most power. Because the principal on the first floor had the public address system. Because the way the schools were designed in the beginning, they were all just one school. So everybody scheduled gym, everybody scheduled lunch, everybody scheduled auditorium. And if there was a message to be given to the school, it was given to the whole school, so that every time the principal was sending a message to his or her school, the other schools had to endure the message. And then what happens when the other two principals, or in my case, other three principals, have to come down and give messages? Well, this message is for the children in Frederick Douglass. Well, this message is for the children in Roots and Shoots. Well, this message is for the children in Kappa. We were disturbing the whole school far longer, because when it was one school, there was only one message. Now we had four. And all the children. And brother, in schools that are challenged, it is very dangerous when you use the PA system, because children be laughing at what may be said. They may be wondering what's being said. And after that PA system goes off, you got to get that children back. You have to get that classroom back under management control. And once you get them under control and back focused on what you were teaching, comes the next message. And then you got to get them back in the order again. And then comes the next message. Wow. The system has failed, Brother Kelly, but it's up to us. We know. Dr. Clark used to say, if they don't treat you right, what make you think they're going to teach you right?
That's right. That's right. Look, Doc, Brother Kaba, everything you just said ties me right back to this simple science. And we know that, like, in order to build any structure, one must establish a strong foundation to build it on, which is what you was just talking about. So as we think about that, what foundation do we need to reunite our young people back to those illustrious conditions that existed when our people were thriving?
The first thing is to allow them to be safe in your presence. You know, one of the things I tell folk when they say, well, what can we do right now? The first thing we can do right now, when I'm going to my garage to get my car, I pass a whole bunch of brothers and sisters. I speak to them. Hey, brother, what's going on? Peace to you, my brother. How's it going? No long, but what I'm doing is I'm respecting them. Ra means to look at in a spiritual light. Spect means to look. Ra means in a spiritual light. When we say respect or respect, what I'm doing is I'm recognizing you. I'm acknowledging your existence. I'm accepting you for who you are. I am approving of what our relationship is. The first thing, I've been on the elevator. I live on the top floor in my building. So normally when I'm going downstairs, I'm the only one so far. For the most part, I'm the only one on the elevator, unless there's somebody on my floor that's going down too. But for the most part, I'm by myself. So I'm on the elevator. Somebody comes on. I say, hello, how are you? You know, they got that attitude. Okay. Another time I go on, they come back on the elevator. I say, hey, hello, how are you? Hello. Okay. Still not too nice, but okay. I see him again. I say, hey, hello, how are you? They say, hello, I'm fine. How are you? Next time I see him, they now say to me, hello, how you doing? Somebody has to break down our pain. They don't want to speak to me? Okay, that's it. No, that's not how I feel. I'm not saying to put yourself in harm's way.
Right.
What I'm saying, Brother Kelly, is each and every one of us, myself included, we still feel pain from this past 400 and something years. Intergenerationally and transgenerationally, we've been handed down a painful experience. Some of us are deeper into the hurt than others. Hurt people hurt people.
That's right.
And so what I attempt to do is, my mama used to always say, no matter how cold the iceberg, it still can melt at the right temperature. And I've often tried to be that temperature that can melt that iceberg, that can continue to speak for them to feel safe in my presence. It is un-African for us not to speak to each other. The person-to-person relationship is fundamental to us as a people. And so the first thing, we need to respect each other and have people feel safe in our presence. Lead by example. We're talking to our children, brother, and even the best of us who have the best intentions in our heart, we're not happy. And so our children are looking at us and they're saying, but you're saying all this is so great, but I don't hear you saying anything that why do I want to have to complain for the rest of my life like you are?
Exactly.
Show me something that can make me laugh. Show me something that you'll show that when Africans are great, what made them great? This is why on my Instagram, I'll post up pictures of me dressed in African-American owned, for the most part, African-American owned clothing stores, African-American owned jewelry. I lead by example. We all out here trying to get these Indo-European clothing designs. So, oh yeah, I'm wearing so-and-so, I'm wearing so-and-so. What I'm saying to you is, why don't you shout out an African-American owned clothing company?
Indeed, indeed.
So when you go up on my Instagram page, you'll see it, okay? And the reason why I'm doing it is because I'm supporting Black businesses while I'm trying to teach something. We have to show our children. I'm trying to make it real for them. I wanted to make it an in thing. I want them to be proud. Just like they say, yo, man, I spent $600 on this belt. And they proud. And the more they spent, the prouder they are.
Mm-hmm.
And that ain't built for you. That ain't your style. The only reason why it's your style is because people respect that designer and they give you props for that. But suppose we had Black-owned companies that had that reputation. That's what I'm attempting to do with the Black-owned companies. I'm trying to represent them and show us how powerful it is to be you, and to love you, to respect you. Image, how we present ourselves is very important to our children. It's very important to our people. Respect. Understand that any civilization that does not honor and respect the woman of that society is doomed to fail. Ain't nobody going no place without sisters beside them.
Indeed.
That's just the way it is. Historically, we can go back and see that. Now, I'm not saying that we don't have our own issues between us, but we don't have our issues because they're a woman, and sisters don't have a problem with us because we men. We have a problem with each other because we just jacked up.
Now, you're hearing some thoughts, and it often aligns me back to the old African proverb that said, the child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. So, you made them warm because you broke down that barrier and you built a bridge for them to meet you halfway.
That's right.
And as teachers, and I tell people, everybody, we all teachers, we all students, and we all teachers. That's right. Just depends on the moment. Now, you and I had some discussion even before here, actually the other night, where we was talking about the intent of testing during ancient times. Yeah. Would you share with the audience what that conversation, one of your stories around that conversation and how we got it backwards.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you want to break it down into three categories, there's three ways a teacher can approach the management of the classroom. You can go from the individualist perspective, the competitive, or the cooperative.
Mm-hmm.
The individual classroom, the teacher will say, even in the house, the way we raise our children goes along, even when we interact with each other. See, everything that applies to the school applies to life, because school is life. Individuals say, look here, yo, I don't care what anybody else in this classroom is doing. You do you. Forget them. You do you. Some people develop a classroom. That's when you want to control and contain your class, because then your relationship becomes, if you do what you're supposed to do, you got it.
Mm-hmm.
The competitive says that you must compete against the other students. So how you do is reflected by how they do. And the cooperative way of educating says, if everybody don't get through, nobody's doing their job. We got to pull everybody across, because when the tide comes in, all boats, large and small, rise. And so this is a joint effort. Those are three different ways that you can teach. When you are in a society that loves the children, and first let me just back off and say, when I've studied methodology, African methodology, even to this day, but even when I go back to Kush and Kemet, and I go to West Africa, and I go to Congo, and I go to Manu Mutapa in Southern Africa, every civilization is built on the premise of making the children better than you. They're supposed to do better than you. They're supposed to sit on your shoulders with the knowledge and wisdom that you have gained from those that came before you, so they can take it to the next level. When you are living in that type of society, it becomes important that you create the atmosphere in the classroom that's conducive to the betterment of the children and the society itself. And so therefore, when a child takes a test in this system, for the most part, if you get 100, your paper goes on top of the bulletin board. If you get 90, it goes under the 100. If you get 80, it goes under the 100. If you didn't pass the test, it don't even go up on the bulletin board. So you non-existent. In the African tradition, the test was not to see what you knew. It was to figure out what you didn't know and then teach you what you didn't know, so that you took a test, out of 10 questions, you got 8 right and 2 wrong. The most important part of that test for you, the learner, and the teacher, was to see the 2 you didn't get right, so that when you found out what you didn't know, that's what they taught you. And then the next time you took the test, you got 10 right. Because the teacher, the society, the school had faith in your abundant ability. And that becomes a key. It's not what you know that's important. It's what you don't know that's important. Most of my greatest lessons that I learned came from what I didn't know. I always tell people, people never lose. Wise people never lose. They either win or they learn. And what they learn helps them win the next time they try it. It's totally backwards, brother. But this is an edu business. There is money in failure.
Mm-hmm.
If a school don't have nobody going to summer school, no teachers are going to go on vacation. You need children to fail to have summer school, so that you, in the last 2 weeks, right about now, so that you can go on vacation with the money you made from summer school. Because most teachers go on vacation from the money they made in summer school.
Wow.
It's the way the system works, brother. And it's not in our favor. It's not in their favor either. That's why the children are shooting each other up in schools and throwing bombs
Right.
at each other and, murdering each other. And, a lot of the boys don't even know who they are. They're all called cells, incels,
Mhm.
involuntary celibate, because they don't even know their own manhood. They going around, they don't even know how to deal with women. They mistreat the women, and that's built out of everything that they do. Most of them are incels, and you see all these people, these polite, these boys, these proud boys, and all these different. They're a bunch of people who don't know how to interact with women. What one woman said, that when she went to this on January 6th, when all of them went and they went into the Capitol building, they said more women were mistreated that were in that group than the people they were attacking.
Yep.
And that's why they let that one woman get shot.
Yeah, that was.
Named Babbitt. They let her bust through they busted through the window, and they encouraged her to go through, and she the one that they shot.
Yep.
Well, look at their early images, man. I don't know if you can go back this far, brother. But when I was growing up, there's, in cartoons and in shows, we used to see the caveman come and hit the woman in the head with a big
Yeah.
stick
Yep.
and drag her into the cave by the hair and then rape her.
Mm-hmm.
I'm telling you what I remember as children. I saw Bugs Bunny do that before. And that was their image of relationships. To hit the woman on the head with a club, drag her by the hair in the cave, and rape her. So why would we be surprised at the incels today? The incels today are nothing but those cavemen. They don't know how to relate to women because they don't even know their own manhood.
It's ironic that you share that, because it also takes me back to, we go back to the plantation and we look at buck breaking.
Oh, yeah.
And so the posturing, my lack of self-esteem causes me to prove my manhood in a way that humiliates you in front of your family, but also is not organically something that's tied to what I call Mayato balance, right? You have the masculine energy and the feminine energy, but in this space is a masculine energy trying to violate, or not trying, violating a masculine energy. And it shows out very differently than them, but it's the same implications. And as I listen to you speak tonight, the other piece is the one thing that we know, we got hieroglyphics, metanuture, but also it hasn't changed here, because what they do is they take and put symbology to influence us. Back to what you were speaking to the music industry. We talk consumption. What am I watching in programming, which is television, all these things. And then when we even talk military, before we invade any country, PSYOPs first sends messages to program your mind to believe a certain thing, which goes back to this thing around, you talked about psychology and what psychology truly is. But for us here, I am telling you that you have ADHD when you probably don't have ADHD. I never sat and I've never done tests to truly gauge whether it was something you was eating. Like if you or I eat Captain Crunch cereal before I come to school and I drink a soda full of sugar, it's natural for me to be moving all around the place because the energy from the sugar is what's causing it. It's not because I have a chemical imbalance in my body. And so back to understanding, brain anatomy and common sense, but we've created this image of our young men as not being a person who can learn. And then they start believing it because I keep force feeding it to you. And so subconsciously, you start to believe it. And nobody's there to advocate for you like you're advocating and like you've been advocating for over 40 years.
Absolutely. Buck breaking was not for the person that was being broke. It was for the community.
Fear.
You know, what happened to George Floyd, that was an attempt at buck breaking.
Yes.
It failed. You know, and I always try to take the best and leave the rest. There were things that came out of that incident, as horrific as it was, that was very important for us to psychoanalyze. Because when he had his knee on George Floyd's neck and everybody was telling him to get off and he wouldn't get off and he was looking at them defiantly, that was buck breaking. That was saying to those groups, what I am doing to him, you can do nothing about. And I'll do it to you if you step out of line. That was buck breaking. Buck breaking is rape, period.
Mm-hmm.
Rape is about power. When they buck broke the brother, it wasn't about the psychosexualness of it. Actually, it was attempting as a depigmented, insecure, inferiority complex man feeling his manhood by entering the body of a buck, of a black man. He felt his masculine because, again, as we have our relationships, it is the man that enters the woman's body, so to speak. The same is true when you go into a man from the backside. It is, he is the man and you are the woman. And the only way that man could feel power was to go inside your body. And when you look at all of the different examples, when they used to lynch us, the first things they used to go after was the penis and the testicles.
Yep.
And there was times that they ate them. In France, they used to have mummy parties where they would chop up the mummy and put it in the drink, hoping that the power of the mummy would come into them. It was called mummy power. They ate black people. And, you know, we may not pick it up, but as you look at what's going on now, you can see these folk are in trouble. Their time is up now. But we shouldn't be surprised at that. They have never been able to manage a civilization beyond 500 years. Because even when you look at the Persians that came in on Kush Kemet in 525 BC, they ruled up until about 332 BC, which was a little over 200 years, give or take, or whatever it may have been. And then Alexander came in with the Macedonians, or what they called the Greeks, and he took over Egypt. And he stayed there until 30 BC, when the Romans came in. So Greeks had it for about 300 years. And then the Romans came in. The Roman Empire fell somewhere around 300 or 400 AD. So you're dealing with 300 years of their civilization. And then Europe went into the Dark Ages until 700, when Africans went in and brought the Moorish civilization in.
Dark Ages.
That lasted for 700 years until 1492. And even in Egypt, Islam never really took a hold. So even the Indo-European, what we call Arabs, they didn't maintain a civilization for any length of time. And so here we are, 1492 to come up here, a little over 500 years. The Indo-European culture and civilization has never survived more than 500 years, give or take, because they're based in an erratic, ignorant, and arrogant, despiritualized system. Africans, no matter how, and you know, brother, black folk did some bad things to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that we was living all beautiful and everything was wonderful. We had our times too. But the one thing that all African traditions had, it was based in what we call ma'at.
Balance.
So that when you fell, you could always go back to the code. Truth, justice, balance, harmony, order, arrangement, propriety, ethics, respect, and reciprocity. Because when you live by reciprocity, that's one of my favorite characteristics of ma'at. Well, go around, come around. You shall reap what you sow. I like that. Because no matter how it is, this is what Dr. King meant when he said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. Okay, so you up now, you got the power, and we see what you're doing. But one day you're gonna fall. And when you fall, you're gonna meet the same people going down that you met when you was going up. And what do you think we're gonna do to you as you pass us? You got a panther by the tail. You're spinning it. You're too tired to keep spinning the panther, but you're too afraid to let it go for what the panther is. So the panther's just laying back, conserving energy. He's hurt because you're pulling on his tail, but he's conserving his energy because he knows what? He knows the same thing that the Taliban told the United States and Europe. Y'all got the watch. We got the time. We got to get ourselves together, Brother Kelly.
Yes, yes, we do.
We have to get ourselves together. And by the way, just as a side note, when we're thinking about what's going on in Afghanistan, Afghanistan treat black people very badly over there.
Oh, yeah.
So I ain't looking for no friends, okay? Because I'm black first. When something go down, see, when I did the Instagram Live, I believe that we must be fluent in everything that happens around the world. But we must be black first. So what does Afghanistan have to do with me? What does the world events have to do? I must look at these events through my eyes, not through what I hear on TV. And if I find out that you're not treating black people right and you up here begging for help, you want to talk to me? No, you better go home and treat your people right. Treat my black people right. You know, we just have to get to that point. With due respect to everybody and everything that's going on, man, my heart goes out to the innocent people. Because Ma'at demands that you understand the innocent.
Right.
Okay? Don't get personal with this. And so why I just said what I said, I also have a supreme unconditional love for those Afghani children. But guess what? What's most important to me is my children. I understand your children. I wish you well, and I'll keep you in my prayers. But I'm focused on black children. It's just the way we have to look. This way I look at it anyway.
Nah,
I'm black first.
I agree 100%.
And you know, Brother Kelly, I'm not going to say unapologetically and unashamedly because I have no reason to be ashamed or apologetic. So I don't have to be on anything. I'm just for my people. Everybody else is. The only time everybody start talking about sharing is when it comes to us.
Yep.
Okay. Ain't nobody talking multicultural when we dealing with your culture. But the moment black folk want something, everybody say, oh, but what about this race? What about this culture? What about? No, it's about my culture. You deal with your culture. Because I think you should deal with your culture. Culture is to humans as water is to a fish. So I'm all for that. But 60 years ago, brother, when we was on the street telling people, look, you need to support us. When the African-American civil rights and human rights movement was on the move, we told our brothers and sisters who spoke Spanish, join us, march together, we'll make a difference. Some did, but as a group, they didn't. When people from Indo-Europe, Arabs came and they settled in Michigan and places like that, we told them, join us. Some did, but as a group, they didn't. Same thing with Asians. In 1980, we told the Asian community, look, you need to identify yourself to a landmass, like Malcolm used to say. African American. We told them because, see, Europeans called them Orientals up until 1980. When today people of Asian descent say, no, I'm Asian American. We encourage them to do that because Orientals don't mean nothing.
Nope.
And we said, join us. Some did. As a group, they didn't. Now look, you have what we now have a new term, Asian American hate. We have Muslims that are being blocked out of the country. And we have Spanish-speaking brothers and sisters where they're building a wall to keep them out of our country. So you see, what we told you 60 years ago has come to pass. Because had you joined us back then, we wouldn't be in this position now. So now here we are now with the Black Lives Matter movement, and everybody's talking about, let's come together as a group. No, you want to join my group. I ain't joining yours.
That's right.
Because if you knew what you had to do, you would have done it 60 years ago. So what make me think I'm going to follow you now? Black folk been consistent with their stuff.
And look, and historically, we've kind of supported every other group.
That's
and
right.
like you said, when it came down to it, when it was an injustice against our folk, we couldn't get any support.
That's it. And so now that we are here, we have to understand our leverage in our diplomacy and negotiation.
Yes.
And like I've told them, because I've been invited to join cultural groups that are attempting to develop curriculum for their particular group. And I've done it. I've done curriculum on Asian history, Hispanic history. I've done curriculums on Islam and religious understandings. So I've done it, and they've invited me to be a part of their group. I say, no, I'm not going to be a part of your group. If you want my knowledge, you have to join my group. I'm not bringing my knowledge to you. You are going to bring yourself to my knowledge. I'd be more than happy to help you. And I would help people, Brother Kelly. I'm not like that because Ma'at demands justice.
Right.
And even though you avoided the devil, even though you avoided the vampire, Dracula, the whole movie, if a minute before the movie ends, you get bit by Dracula, you're going to start acting like the undead. And what my concern is that we will become so hard to how we've been treated that we'll get in too deep and we won't be able to get out to restore Ma'at.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm concerned about. But I tell you this, bruh. There was a movie called Ragtime back in the day, and it talked about the ragtime music. It was the last movie that the actor James Cagney was in.
Okay.
And it was called Ragtime. I forget what the brother's name was, but he played the part of this musician that had a beautiful car, and it was drop top, and he parked it in the street, and it was outside a fire department. And when the firemen, Europeans, saw that it was his car, they came out and they defecated in it.
Oh wow!
And it made the brother go buck wild crazy. And he wanted to blow up this building. I'm just paraphrasing the story. And they had a fictitious character that was meant to represent Booker T. Washington, who was put into this building to talk him out of blowing up this building. And he gave respect to Booker T. Washington, listening to what he was saying and understanding what he's saying. And at the end, Booker T. Washington character said, well, what do you think about what I just said? He said, I think you're an angel living in hell.
Wow.
And I've expanded on that concept by saying even an angel living in hell must act a little devilish. Because angels don't survive in hell. That's where the devils dwell. Now, once you get back to heaven, it's incumbent upon you to get angelic again. But while you in hell, you better be a little devilish. But don't let it taint you. Don't let it stain you. That you carry that pain when you get back up into heaven. Because devils don't survive in heaven. That's why they in hell. And so that's how I see this whole thing. Justice. It must be justice. That's Ma'at. So as on one level, I say, I'm looking out for Black children first. I am. And just like I say, I will not join their group. I won't. But it doesn't mean that I don't have the sensitivity to understand the pain that another person feels, even though it is not my culture. I feel the pain. I understand the pain. And I understand the need for you to teach your children your history and your culture. But I am not willing to make the mistakes of the past. I'm just not willing to make those mistakes again, my brother.
Well, I'll tell you what, the beauty is this. The one thing we know is that we've endured and suffered a lot. And history, although painful, our history, to your point earlier when you was talking about standing on the back of the ancestors, history allows us to be able to propel ourselves further in the future. But when we don't understand our history or we don't know our history, we repeat the same problems that we've already went through. And so, yeah, I'm like you. And to your point as well, it's not about, like, you can empathize because we've experienced it, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, other people can only sympathize because they haven't felt our pain, but they'll tell us, well, you should, why does that matter? You should just get over it. What do you mean? Like, you didn't tell that to the so-called Jewish folk. It's okay for them to, deal with their pain of the Holocaust, but you keep telling us to get over slavery.
Oh, yeah.
And we still live in a big part of slavery, even in this very moment.
Absolutely. And I'll be the first one to tell anyone of Jewish faith, you better never forget. But also don't forget we're in America. And the Holocaust, while it does dwell here in the United States, that happened in Europe. That's a European problem. The enslavement of African people was an American problem. This happened here. So you telling me to forget what happened here, but I would never tell you to forget what happened over there.
Exactly. And that's because you understand very well, like, we spiritual beings in a physical body living a human experience. And in that human experience, we understand that regardless of the situation, our humanity is what always has to come to the forefront, which goes right back to what you were saying. Even if I have to shift a bit because of a condition, I can't allow it to consume me so that I become so hardened that I become the very thing that we are dealing with right now.
That's right. Because ma'at, reciprocity. You shall reap what you sow. When you present negativity, when you wish, I don't wish anybody bad. Because when you evoke negativity, negativity hovers around you because you've ushered it forward. It hovers around you. And so at any point that you may have an emotional weakness, something happens, you're sad, something happens, that evil will then go through your pores. By that, I mean your protective aura that protects you is strong. But as you begin to go through different emotional situations, negativities, it becomes porous. I'm speaking spiritually now. It becomes porous. And then negativity can come in and then you start dwelling in that. You know how when you're feeling bad and you just enjoy feeling bad, you don't want to pull yourself up. When someone tries to pull you up out of it, you don't like it because you're feeling so good just being down there. But all that time is negativity is just swirling around you. And the deeper you go into that pit and the longer you stay there, the harder it is for you going to be able to pull yourself up out of it.
Yes.
Brother Kelly, I know how we got in this position. I know what they did. The lies, the stealing, the cheating. I know what they did, the cold copying when we weren't watching, the deception. I know what they did. But I don't blame them for the condition that I find myself in. I know what they did, but I assume full responsibility for the position I find myself in, because when you blame somebody else for the position you're in, you give them the power to take you out, but you also give them the power to keep you in.
Yes.
You know, when you're dealing with algebra, brother, and you're dealing with an equation, the only thing that will solve your equation are your variables.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just pull a variable out here and put it into your equation, think it's going to solve your problem. Indo-Europeans, Eurasians are not a variable in my problem. And so therefore, when they have advice for me, mind your business. Did I say something about you? See, when you blame them, you bring them into your conversation. You ain't got no place in my conversation. Each and every one of us, Brother Kelly, is born with a Judas and a Messiah. The Judas is born to ensure you never reach your divine goal. The Messiah was born to make sure you do. Judas may fall down 9 times, but Messiah rises 10.
That's it.
That's how we have to think. We have to have that resilient, I call it a plantation mentality. Do you know what our ancestors must have felt going through what they went through? And here I am in 2021 thinking I'm having a hard time. I'm embarrassed. When I think of what they went through in their life, there were bones found in New York of someone who was chronologically 29 years old, but he had the body of a 77-year-old man. That's how bad they worked him.
Mm-hmm.
He was 29 in age, but 77 in body structure. They worked him day in and day out. And our sisters, if a brother couldn't work, she took his place and did her work too. Not to mention what would have happened to her in the big house that night. I pray every day for the spirit of our ancestors to dwell within me. Whatever it was that got you to do what you did, I pray for that spirit to be in me. And I celebrate that. And that's what keeps me going. Knowing what our ancestors did and what they were willing to do. You know, when we begin to understand what we've experienced as a people and where we have been as a people and what we have achieved as a people, there'll be no holding us back, Brother Kelly. If we just understood how powerful we were.
Indeed.
That's who we are, brother. We have done things, brother, that is miracle. See, we all going back to Kush and Kemet for a classical African civilization. I tell people all the time, you don't have to go back that far. Go back to the plantations.
Yes.
Our ancestors were classical African people. They were classical. You can go back to hip hop. That's a classical African civilization. Everything we touch is classical, brother.
That's right. That's right.
We bring class and dignity and integrity to what we do. That's our strength. But when you're in hell with the devil, that's our weakness too. That's why you got to act devilish when you're in hell.
Look, Dr. Kaba, I ain't gonna keep you too much longer, but you kind of riled me up. So I want to leave out of here a couple things. I want you to give me one thing that you're grateful and hopeful for. And then I want to give you something before you walk up out of here.
Okay. I'm grateful for you. And I'm hopeful in us.
I love that because like you inspired me today. So this is what I'm gonna give you. Because you talked about that right and left side operating in harmony. So I'm gonna go to, we had some stimulating conversation today. So I'm gonna go to my creative side real quick. So if 2021 was the rebirth of the Kings, and 2021 was the year of perfect vision and then some, I'm gonna ask you to breathe deeply and relax. Hear my words, for they are empowered by these forthcoming absolute facts. And when life challenges you with obstacles, barriers, and stereotypes that place you in a box or bubble, remember the great orator Frederick Douglass said, there can be no progress without a struggle. And for that out-of-box creativity, kick down the walls, blow off the roof. You are our living proof that creativity is not thinking outside the box. It's realizing that no box exists. You are and always have been the gift. In the depths of the night, we know that only darkness exists. It's in those pressurized conditions that coal is transitioned from a melanated stone to a precious diamond, signifying its venerable pedigree that includes each and every one of our ancestry. So please relax your eyes and take a journey within. And if our young kings were asleep, now the kings are awoke and school is in session. And since we stand together on hollow ground, today with Brother Kaba, Black male education is our profession. If we collectively accountable to orient your direction, I go deep into my soul, to the source, internal intuition and navigation, culturally cultivating the perpetuation of our elevation. The DNA and blood that runs through our veins is the highest octane fuel that chemists would say permeates change, maximizes resilience and drive, so efficiency thrives. When our creativity has matured, our central nervous system opens the door for our cells, receptors, and brain to function at optimal capacity, which explains our ravenous tenacity, summed up in several words. Your innovation, dynamic, empowered, scholar, warrior, and catalytic. They say you are what you eat. That's nutrition. I submit that you are what you think. That's cognition. Collectively, we change the narrative by turning up the ignition. Thus, I must feed you the facts that manifest your illustrious condition. You, my brother, you are that light that shines so bright that it blinds our vision at your very sight, whether by day or by night. You are the archetype of past, present, and future. You're holographic. With quantum capabilities, you're terrific. You are the descendants of ancestors who wrote the hieroglyphics and architecture, pyramids, mansions, while also originating education and medicine. Shout out to Imhotep. You are the creator's foundation and solution. However, be mindful of the pollution and corruption, because you, King, are one of our greatest eruptions. And so if we build as we climb, then what are we building this time? Our mind can't be confined to a physical place or time. I understand that our assignment is divine. Therefore, I grind, align, educate, ignite, and transform until new dreams are born. Disenfranchised, exploited, and extorted, transition to unified, economically empowered, and supported, eradicating the new Jim Crow and redlining until it's voided. I say failure is not an option. So those who doubt, stop, son. Remember that you shine like one. Oxymoron, polar opposites, day and night, sun and moon. The duality of life illuminates existence. Our persistence and commitment elevates when we understand our purpose. Therefore, I ask the elders for a strategic plan and guidance on how we effectively work this. Their response, invest in our best and brightest, which are the young and old. Listen, speak infinite life into their soul, while attentively listening and helping them navigate their dreams and goals. Then providing historical lessons that solidify the manifestation of their success. Let them know that they are truly blessed because they stand on the backs of our great ancestors who rest in power, that we may live the same. Say their name: Martin, Maya, Sojourner Truth, Carter G. Woodson, all revolutionary warriors of the past. But what about those fallen soldiers who have recently transitioned, like Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Sandra Bland? Say their name, now activate the plan for justice and equity in this inequitable land. Our solution is eradication of all the pollution. And although I medically retired as a combat vet, I'm re-enlisting for the melanated revolution. I'm gonna take a knee or stand. And like Cat, I'm standing up for Black Lives Matters and kings and queens across this universal land. Say their name, my brother.
Say their names, brother. All the collective understanding of even those who we may not know their name, but still lived in our stead and brought us this far.
Indeed, indeed.
So, brother, thank you, brother. I appreciate that. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate that thought, because everything I do was just expressed by you. That's exactly why I do what I do. And I thank you for this opportunity. That's why when you said, was I grateful? You know, what I was grateful for. And I said, I'm grateful for you, because I once told Professor Clark, who I consider to be my teacher, I said, you know, Dr. Clark, I could never repay you for what you've done for me. That was young, brother. I could never repay you for what you've done for me. He said, you're right, because you ain't got that much money. Said, but you can repay me by doing for others what I've done for you. And so this opportunity of being with you this evening has given me that opportunity to thank Dr. Clark. And I'm grateful for that, for being able to thank him by being with you and your audience to bring us to a certain level of understanding. There is nothing that we cannot achieve. Our motto should be, if it is to be, it is up to me. Don't look for nobody outside yourself to do something that you need to do for yourself. That was the message of Booker T. Washington, Marcus Garvey, Noble Drew Ali, Elijah Muhammad, and Malcolm, all wrapped up into one, not to mention Martin Luther King and Fannie Lou Hamer. If it is to be, it's up to me. So it becomes important that we understand that all change starts with the man in the mirror, the woman in the mirror. And while we're looking in the mirror, let me give you the first homework assignment. When I met Dr. Clark when I was 12 and a half, he gave me a homework assignment. And I'm going to give it to everybody that's listening to me. If you're not already did this homework, I want you to go and stand in your bathroom. This is what Dr. Clark told me. I was 12 and a half, 7th grade. He said, I want you to look in the mirror and I want you to tell the person that you're looking at, I love you, and mean it. Because if you can't do that, there's nothing anyone else can do for you.
Wow.
And my children used to laugh because they used to congregate around the bathroom door when I used to be getting ready to go to work and taking them to school, because they used to always laugh. And of course, I'm going to act up now. So I start throwing kisses to myself, telling me how much I love you. And then I would have them come up and do it. And they'd have to stand on the side of the tub because they were small. They were children. Love yourself, family. Love the width of your nose, the size of your lips, the complexion of your skin, and the texture of your hair, because the Creator don't make mistakes. So the way you were born is the way the Creator wanted to look, because you are the Creator having a human experience. And the other thing, just if I may say this, I encourage you to go to my website, www.kabakamene.com. Download my free e-course and study guide, and a lot of other information will come to you through you going to my website. And go to my Instagram page, because my Instagram page, when you talked about the webinars and all the other things, they're all listed in my link tree, in my bio, on my Instagram. And look to see what we're doing. And also, if you're interested in the 3 books I've written, they're on Amazon. Just go to Amazon, Google my name, Kaba Hiawatha Kamene. And we'll take it from there, because family, we've had a number of great people join the Ancestors recently.
Mm-hmm.
And the most recent is a brother you may not know. And I'm speaking to everybody. I'm not speaking in the sense that somebody may not. I'm just saying that you may not know a brother named Sababu. Sababu was Dr. Amos Wilson's right-hand person. Blueprint for Black Power. When I last spoke to Sababu, he was telling me about how he was updating the information, because when Dr. Wilson joined the Ancestors back in the 90s, a lot of things have happened. Numbers have changed since then. Sababu was the one that was changing those numbers. Blueprint for Black Power, he was doing over again. He already gave me the African Genius. Sababu's now joined the Ancestors, but he left us a legacy. Our brother Runoko Rashidi, okay, good friend to me, genius. He has joined the Ancestors. I did Instagram Live in Kemet, in Egypt, twice. And I honored him for all that he did for us. And we have had others, and I'm sure that you in your life, you've had those that have transitioned, but this is all part of it. Because as my second book, Spirituality Before Religions, tells you, there will come a time we'll all be together again.
Yes.
You know, you may miss mommy and daddy as I do, and uncles and aunts and friends and family. But one day we'll be back in the waters of none. All of us will be back one day. And it's important to understand this. We will all be back together. I know we will miss them on a physical level because we can't talk to them. But if you just call their name, they'll be with you. Just like you say their name, just say their name and they'll be with you. And what brought them to you was not them coming from the outside in. You invoking their name brought them from inside out. Know you have that power. Bask in it. Ra is right. So, brother, I thank you for this opportunity of sharing these times. I look forward to the future. This is just the beginning of other convos.
I appreciate you. And again, you're right. This is only the beginning because, again, we got to get you down here in Charlotte. Your work speak volumes. He just shared the books. Trust me, you won't be able to put, I'm only missing one book. I got the Quibinars. I got 2 of your books. Been following you for years, so follow him. You got a king right here that's going to lead you to where you need to get to if you're willing to put in the work. Because faith without work is nothing.
That's it. Support me, family, and I'll support my family.
Peace and blessings, King.
All power to the people, Brother Kelly.
Hotep.
Now, it ain't over till we win.
That's it. All right, brother. Love you.
Peace.
Peace.